Oh, he was kind of an odd man, and he didn't say much. He seemed like kind of a mama's boy. I always was kind of afraid of him, actually. He scared me a lot, and I heard him and his mother argue quite a bit, all the time.
The beach resort of Santa Cruz had been stunned by the mysterious disappearance of a series of young college girls and a catalogue of gruesome discoveries. Then in April 1973, 24-year-old, 6'9" Edmund Kemper unexpectedly confessed that he was the infamous co-ed butcher, and that he now had a tally of 10 murder victims to his name.
Get inside that ratchet. All over.
There are persistent reports that more grisly finds are going to be made. But at the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office, nobody's talking.
Then Big Ed Kemper made a startling confession. He made comments to Jim Connor on the telephone that he had killed all of the co-eds too. Taken into custody, 24-year-old Edmund Kemper would then reveal an extraordinary and sickening tale.
Mrs. Clarnell Strandberg and her friend Sarah Taylor Hallett. He is being held without bail.
He apparently, according to what he says, fantasized about doing this for quite a long period of time, and he states that he never would have been able to have acted out any of this fantasy if it were not for the fact that there were so many attractive, naive girls hitchhiking in the Bay Area and in this county.
The next court date for Kemper is May 21st. He's scheduled to enter a plea at that time.
In addition to the murder of his grandparents, Edmund Kemper had taken the lives of 6 young women. Next, he would commit a murder he'd dreamed of all his life. By March of 1973, 6'9" Edmund Kemper had kidnapped and murdered 6 female co-eds without attracting suspicion. But in April, Detective Michael Aluffi's routine visit to confiscate a firearm had unwittingly sent the suspicious Kemper into panic. The bodies of Kemper's mother and her best friend had been carefully hidden in 2 closets.
The focus of attention today was on 2 automobiles, those belonging to the suspect and to his mother, one of the women he is accused of murdering over the Easter weekend. The cars were sealed and towed into a Santa Cruz garage after discovery of the bodies of Mrs. Clara Strandberg and Mrs. Sarah Taylor in Mrs. Strandberg's Aptos apartment 3 days ago. The same day Kemper was arrested in a Pueblo, Colorado phone booth. With experts from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department assisting, investigators went over both vehicles this morning quite thoroughly. First photographing what they saw, then with rubber-gloved hands taking it out of the car, putting it in a labeled sack, and re-recording each item on a list being compiled. Of course, there was the dusting for fingerprints, too, and if anything they considered significant in their investigation was noted or found, they would not say so at this time. Thursday, a human skull was dug out of the backyard of that Aptos apartment where Kemper and his mother, Mrs. Strandberg, lived. Today, the Sheriff's Department here said identification by the county pathologist would probably not come before next Monday. There is a strong possibility Kemper will be brought up to this general area of the Santa Cruz Mountains sometime this weekend.
Why do you think you were spared any of the violence?
Well, I believe it was the grotto we built her while he was living here. And he used to sit here and watch, and I think she made it possible that he couldn't touch us.
Do you think the Blessed Mother was looking over you?
Oh, definitely.
How do the neighbors feel? Do they all know about it now?
Well, some do, and some are not aware of it yet.
Why, this 24-year-old giant, Edmund Kemper, never bothered his neighbors on this Alameda Street, paid his rent, and went his own way. Except for his 6'9", 280-pound frame, he could have gone unnoticed.
He was an average person. He blended in with everybody. I mean, he talked a lot. When we had a barbecue down here in the backyard last July, but the only time he didn't talk too much is when, like, if I'd meet him in the garage by myself, or he was coming in and I was going out, or the other way around. All he would say is hi, and that was it. But if you tried to start a conversation with him, it was kind of useless. You know, he never really volunteered anything. So.
How do you feel now that you found out he was a neighbor?
Scared stiff, because he really was a neighbor. I lived right next door in the next apartment next to him. And just gives me the creeps is kind of an understatement.
In order to evade detection, Kemper would separate his victims' body parts and dump them in different locations. One spot, just minutes from Detective Terry Medina's home.
He thought we were playing a game, that we really knew he was the murderer.
Kemper worried his mother, Clarnell, would now learn of his actions.
He did not want her to suffer the embarrassment of what he did.
Edmund Kemper resolved to finally commit a crime he had fantasized about since he was a child.
He got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, took a hammer, went into his mother's bedroom, just jammed that hammer through her head several times. That was a very messy murder.
Kemper's mother would suffer the same fate as the young co-eds, and more.
He cut off her head, and then he inserted his penis into her mouth,
Put it on the mantel above the fireplace, and just yelled, screamed at it. And at times he threw darts at her face. He talked about all the times she had screamed at him and yelled at him or belittled him.
He cut out her vocal cords and tried to destroy them in the garbage disposal unit at the sink because it was her chastising him using those vocal cords that so bothered him.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35. It isn't that impossible in this society. It happens.
Are there more people?
They didn't give up.
How many?
She didn't give up. I did. I came in out of the cold. And what I'm saying is there are some people who prefer it in the cold.
What did people see?
A nice guy.
Did you like Kemper?
I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life, other life.
One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out.
She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further? I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding these rages got.
I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative.
Depending on a mood, that would trigger one or the other. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times I looked moody. Other times perfectly serene. Not very sane. But again, people weren't even aware of what was happening.
In 1972 and 1973, a series of murders shocked Northern California. College girls began to disappear while hitchhiking. 2 of the victims were picked up from the campus of the University of California at Santa Cruz. That's where Ed Kemper's mother was working as an administrative assistant.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there?
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had a very
strong and violently outspoken position on men.
for much of my upbringing.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her.
But I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father.
I'm a constant reminder of that failure.
I hate to distill it down into such, into one-word realities like that. There's a lot that leads into that happening, but that is what happened.
It represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her. And I was destroying it. I came with a loaded gun and got us all.